Good morning. Well, thank you to be here. I think that today we have a great panel to talk about the evolution of telemedicine. So let me first introduce myself. I'm Cristian Pascual. I'm the president of Barcelona Health Hub. And we are here today to talk about Telemedicine 2.0. And let me introduce this concept. We all have seen a rise of telemedicine. This is something that has happened because of COVID, and we have seen this adoption coming. But this adoption has been just the first step. A lot of companies put doctors online, and they said, okay, it's done. We have done the job. We have telemedicine. But this remembers me like the early days of the web, when companies put their products online and forget about it. And I think there is a lot to be done now and we will see in the next month and years an evolution, a great evolution, and an integration of these services within the health practice. And we have great panelists to talk about this today. I will let them introduce themselves. Maybe, Ricardo, you want to go first? You have to put on the mics.
I think you can hear me now. So I'm Ricardo from DKV. I'm a nurse, and I'm specialized in digital health and in research for design and innovation. And I've been working at DKV since 2017, so before COVID, and we've been living a lot of things after that. I'm digital health design and research officer.
Hi, good morning. I'm Alexandra Ehrlich. Can you hear me better? Okay. I'm Alexandra Ehrlich. I am the lead scientist for Oracle's Health Innovation Scientific Advisory Group. My background is in biostatistics. I come from the data world and analytics world, have done everything from outcomes research in clinical settings to clinical trials, pharmaceutical trials, device trials. So anything data, anything analytics, that's the perspective I have in the world. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Hi. Yep. So I'm Vicens, Chief Medical Officer at AbbVie Global Health. My background is I'm a physician and a psychiatrist, but I've been working in the digital healthcare space for the last 10 years. Now I am the co-founder of AbbVie Global Health, and I think we'll talk about what we do later. Just introduce here and let take the others.
Hello to everybody. I am Silvia Raga, CEO and co-founder of DyCare. I have more than 10 years of experience in the medtech sector. And in DyCare, we are specialized, a digital startup specialized in physiotherapy and musculoskeletal care. We have developed a digital rehabilitation solution really to improve the adherence and obtain better clinical outcome for the patient. Thank you.
I'm Justin Anderson, Chief Exec of Expert AI, and I'm here this week with Oracle for Startups, which is a program that, as an early stage startup, I've joined, and they're a great company to be able to help me on the journey that I'm on, which is to be able to use artificial intelligence in the healthcare space. Specifically, we work in the area of epilepsy. My background, I was head of technology at KPMG's Global Center of Excellence, responsible for upskilling 70,000 consultants in emerging technology.
Well, thank you. So you see, we have a great panel to talk about this evolution of telemedicine. So first of all, I would ask you, what are you doing in your company for this evolution? I mean, what is the actual work that you are doing in this field? Who wants to take first?
So Expert AI is collaborating with the All India Institute for Medical Science and Brighton and Sussex Medical School in the UK. And we are using output from EEGs. We have over 20,000 EEGs that we are building up volumetric models that allow us to be able to understand the ionic currents that happen inside the brain by using a dry skull cap that picks up changes in voltages. And this allows us to be able to identify the points that a seizure propagates, which allows scientists then to be able to I think I've got a little bit of an issue here, allows a neurologist to be able to better understand the seizure. We then use that information and we combine it with a video of the patient to be able to understand where physically the seizure started. And those two bits of information can help the neurologist.
First of all, in our company, of course, we introduce our technology in the healthcare provider, hospital insurance company, so them to digitize all the rehabilitation process. So this is the first thing. But we also put a lot of effort in the education of professionals to transmit them the add value of what we are doing, the powerful of the data that they are obtaining, because I think that it's really, we need to do a lot of things, not only produce technology, but to change the process, them to introduce this technology very well.
Takes a few seconds. So at AVI Global Health, since 2016, we are working to make the process of consultation more efficient. We are combining AI and doctors to reduce the time a doctor dedicates to a consultation and make it much more easier for the patient also to access to this. The result is that we have reduced the time of a consultation to 2 or 3 minutes for a doctor, which makes one of the scarcest resources in healthcare, which is doctors or healthcare professional, much more available for the rest. Also, with this, we have been able to expand it to 35 countries. We work all with local doctors. And for example, we are working right now in Ukraine, as we were talking, and we're starting to offer the service for free since yesterday. So we have created a system that's very capillary and very easy to expand to different situations and countries.
Alexandra.
Well, for Oracle, I had to reflect on this one. Oracle being a big company doing a lot of different things and serving a lot of verticals, I wanted to kind of find a succinct idea of what we do around this space. And it's really about innovation at scale. And a lot of telemedicine platforms and a lot of these types of technologies have failed to scale once there's an uptake. So that's become really central for us, is how do we allow our customers and our partners to innovate quickly and leverage the technology that we have, everything from the cloud to GPUs, just like kind of nuts and bolts of it, plus our applications, in order to do what they need to do faster and be able to get that in front of the people and that it's going to make a difference for.
And finally, at DKV, we have our app is Quiero Cuidarme Más, that has almost like 500,000 downloads now. And we offer different consultations with the professionals, not only GPs or medicine, but also we offer telepharmacy and telepsychiatry and telepsychology. So what we want is offering these services to our insurers wherever they are, whenever they want, so they can have access to different specialists. And during COVID-19, we developed, we gave access to healthcare professionals to our platform to provide, as a volunteer, to provide visual consultations and as a chat for the whole population, so they wouldn't need to go to a clinic and get exposed to COVID-19.
Okay, great. So, well, thanks for the overview. Let's talk about the trends. What is next? What is coming? I see a lot of possibilities, and I don't see, as I said before, telemedicine fully integrated into healthcare at any way, at any level. So there's a lot of job to be done. So what do you think, and maybe you, Silvia, start first, as the major trends for this evolution?
Yes, in my case, what I think is that really the digitalization of the process, or better say, the tele-digitalization of the process. What we thought that was a digital health in 2015, that what a lot of electronic device put together was not telemedicine. So now we have demonstrated in the last 2 years that it's possible to digitize process. We have proven it with clinical data, and so it's possible. So I think that, as you say, that we have a lot to do, but we are in the correct way to digitize all the things.
I think one of the trends that we're seeing, and at least in our clients, is that they are looking for ROI. They are looking for the return of the investment. They don't want telemedicine to be a bullet point in their presentations for their clients. They are moving to a second cycle. Like, we are getting now clients that already had telemedicine solutions but were not being used, were not working. So I think that at least in our sector, which is working with companies like insurance, I think that they are looking for things that work and things that can prove their value for their customers or for themselves.
Alexandra, maybe we go this way so it's easier to pass the turn.
Okay, perfect. What I'm really seeing out there that I'm really excited about is the augmentation of the experience with devices and monitors. If we've all had this experience at this point, being on Zoom for years now, that there's something missing and we can't quite put our finger on it. So there's a huge opportunity for home monitors and other types of devices to collect that information. So we do know to enhance the perspective from the clinicians in terms of what the data they're getting in order to make decision support, but also for us to understand what the patient experience is and how to enhance that. So it's kind of a two-way opportunity that's there that I'm excited about.
In my opinion, we're going to a hybrid model where we can perform a digital intervention either as a first triage or even as a follow-up. So we have this more efficient and more resolutive system that we will go into.
I grew up in the NHS. My father was the GP, so I was experiencing telemedicine 0, I suppose it was, when people used to phone up and I'd hear half a conversation, which is his response to whatever was on the other end of the line. What that gave me was a sort of sense of understanding my own healthcare and confidence that, in fact, I could have more responsibility for my health. I think one things, despite all the technology that we see coming towards us, is that individuals take more responsibility. They have more personal agency for being able to measure their own situation and understand the possibilities of what is required. And unless we can get that driver, unless people are motivated, then they will continue to fall back on the services that are there today. So I think, you know, this drive towards more wearables that people then start to understand themselves and their vitals better is the beginning of that journey. But that's a journey that I think is critical to happen alongside the technology that we integrate.
Yeah, I think that you touch a lot of points. Maybe to focus on one, and I think that we have a lot of potential with home devices to empower the patient and to take care of many diseases that need an everyday monitoring or just to be proactive with the health of the patient. Victor, would you take this first shot?
Yes, I think that there's obviously a huge potential in home devices. We also need to be aware that we all have a device that is the center of our life. So anything we want to change is hard. I see a huge potential, especially in chronic diseases, though, and things that people want to use on a daily basis. That's my view. So I think it's difficult, but I think it will happen, and especially for some chronic diseases that obviously are a huge percentage of the population, there will be more and more devices that will be in their daily lives.
Alexandra?
I think there's huge opportunity in that space, and even in the immediate with the shortages we have in staffing hospitals. 15 years ago in pediatric cardiology, we were working on these projects. We had a shortage of specialized skill sets around cardiology for pediatrics, so we had to figure out how can we get these kids home faster, but then still be connected to them, right? So still track them. And so this has been out for a long time, and now there's kind of a perfect, the biggest barrier has been devices that are approved in order to provide that data that we want. But that has also been accelerated in the last 2 years. So I think it's a perfect moment for those two things to come together, the devices part and then the telemedicine platforms in order to enable that communication. So it's an exciting time for that specific point.
Yeah, I would mention also not only devices, but also AI, because with the AI, maybe with a camera, we can perform some different tests or get some measurements with just face recognition and face video. So that's really important for us as a corporate also, because we're working at our home care project and collaborating with different initiatives and different startups. Like we're collaborating now with DyCare in a telephysiotherapy. So open innovation is quite key for us, and so we can get the most of our partners, or find the specific partners, or the most adjusted partners for solving those issues. So yeah.
We're going to see thousands of different devices that are going to be monitoring continually different biomarkers, and I think that's, for me, is the key. The personalized biomarker that we're looking for will allow us to then take the step towards personalized medicine, which must be the goal, the outcome, that we actually change medicine in a way that moves us from just popping a few pills to having a specific treatment that is actually going to be regularly monitored, updated and changed. In the software world, we're very used to working in what's known as the agile way, where we're constantly making changes. I have a prescription that was provided to me about 3 years ago, and I'm still taking exactly the same pill that I was taking 3 years ago. I haven't seen anybody since. It hasn't been updated or measured. That has to change.
I just add something because they have a lot of things. But home device, of course, with the coming of IoT, 5G, they know more than anybody else of what we are doing at home. So they will play a role really to further normalize telemedicine. So everybody knows that they do a lot of things to predict pathology and so on, but also in the part of treatment of patient, they will play a fundamental role. So this is my opinion.
No, I think that you all brought also an idea that it's related to my next question, which is what it's enabling this proactive approach that Justin was just saying. I mean, what we need to be seeing to have this real proactive approach from healthcare, which is something that today is lacking, obviously, and tech can enable this. So, Alexandra.
That is really crucial, and it is the technology can lead the way in how we approach that. And historically and traditionally, healthcare has been something that happens to patients, and it's always been very reactive. And the opportunity really is around transparency and being able to create platforms that ease the interaction, but also the transparency of how patients see decisions being made for. I mean, think about it. You do a lab. The labs just go to some data repository and the doctor either doesn't call you and you assume that everything's okay. But to really be able to have access to that data in a meaningful way for a patient versus a provider, it's going to be crucial. So that's kind of that intersection of that telemedicine and that portal idea of that having more ownership of decision support for your care.
Yeah, I would also say that not only focusing on user/patient experience, but user as a professional in the experience, because we need to provide them the tools that it's easy to use and that doesn't interfere in their usual workflows, so they can really use it, because technology is not enough. I mean, if you provide them with technology that's difficult, it's not practical in their usual practice, they will not use it. So we need to focus on the professional experience so they can provide a quality care for the users.
There's a little booth over there where you can actually sit down for about 10 seconds and they will take some video of you and create a little avatar which has been provided to me here. I can touch this against my phone and using augmented reality can make myself and my avatar appear anywhere. Now the avatar is obviously just looking at the outside of me. What we need to move towards is a full digital twin. I should have my entire heart, lungs and every organ as a digital twin that can then be assessed against any symptoms that I might have. So I think that towards a more proactive future, we must have more information that comes together in a way that makes more sense for clinicians and physicians to be able to assess, combined with more information that they can get that moves the conversation that we might have today with the clinician to an informed discussion that allows them to optimize their treatment.
And I also had that the key rule of telemedicine is also to demonstrate to the patient that is the leader of the recovery process, is the direct responsible. So we really needed to invest a lot of time to teach the patient that is responsible. So to put all the tools through telemedicine, not only to assist, but to guide the patient in the correct use of the technology. So it's important to empower the patient, improve the experience of the patient, all these things, but the patient needed to understand that he is the leader in this point.
Yeah, to dwell it of a different point, I'm a bit skeptical about being proactive. What I mean is that I think the key here is lowering barriers, right? And I put an example about my company. For example, we offer the service through WhatsApp, through Telegram, through SMS, through Viber in countries where they use Viber, through the apps of our clients, through a pop-up in a website, right? So what it means is that our usage ends up being like 10 times more than previous solutions. And I'm going to put an example. When people switch from going to a travel agency to buying tickets online, nobody was proactive about it. It was just easier, much easier. So everybody did it. So I think that the change must be about being lowering barriers and making things easier for the patient. That's how I see it.
No, that's a good point. And I think maybe it's both things. I mean, it should be easier for the patient, and also healthcare should have a more proactive approach to the patient to get back with feedback or with a warning of an action. But to shift to another thing, I think, and this is something that amazed me because as you know, I'm in the industry, I sell projects to clients, and nobody talks about the data that we are collecting. And this is something that surprised me, because in healthcare, I see only two types of data. That data that's worth millions, and the data that today people have not discovered that worth millions. So what is happening? How we will leverage, or when we will leverage all these data from that we are collecting. You're passing to Alexandra because you want to start, Ricardo? Okay.
Yeah, I can start actually. Okay. So actually there's a lot of room for improvement in data analysis, both I think in every industry or in every field, but also in healthcare, because it seems like we've been with paper like 2 years ago almost, and we're going to non-structured data that we have in clinical records. So the analysis of that data, that will be the fuel, or will be the gold of that could lead us to maybe prevention, or maybe to interventions that could be proactive, as we've talking about. Because if we don't have a structure in this data, it's really difficult to analyze and to get some results from that.
Justin?
So data is interesting. If I'd said 1-5, it means nothing. It's only when I say Man United 1, Chelsea 5, does it mean something. By putting different bits of data together, you can create information which has meaning. In large hospitals, we have over 100 different systems with siloed data sets that need to come together. By joining up the data, we can create much more value, and that's where we'll create the £100 million worth of value and the data.
Okay, in line with what also say Ricardo, is that my question is, we are collected in the right way this data, because as Ricardo said, we need to structure this data, otherwise we have a mountain of rubbish data and anything can be extracted for this data. So it's true. I think that a lot of things we are doing with this data, we need to do more, of course. But this really is an important part. For example, in my company, from the beginning, we are very obsessed how to structure the data, how to protect this data, how we deal with this data. Because another point is we are then prepared to deal to all with this data in the future. So we needed to think about this point.
Yeah, so I'm not a specialist in data, but obviously I can clearly see that data is being underused and should be used more. It's difficult to put in action, obviously, especially massive healthcare systems and massive amounts of data. I can explain an example. For example, again, in my company, we are using data from previous cases to predict which doctor is going to be able to answer better a given question, for example. But that's because we have a very structured data that come in a written way in the form of a question and an answer. So we are very well set up for that. I think that data must be used, of course. I don't have the answer for massive healthcare systems. Of course, there are studies and lots of promising things that have been published, so that data helps professionals taking decisions on their daily work.
Well, I think Alexandra can illustrate in this question.
Yes, I won't take too long, but I wanted to go back to Justin's point about the data aggregation, right? So one of the biggest problems around telemedicine was that it became its own data silo. Even though it was encounter data for clinical workflows that had a parallel in person, they became data silos that we had no access to. So we had no clarity. And something that that telemedicine has had a huge blind spot in is the assumptions we made. We've been saying for years that systems are not ready for telemedicine, that people are not ready for telemedicine, and then we tried it, and we can say that, okay, it was unforeseen circumstances. There's some of that, but if you look at the data that's come out and the research that we're doing, the people who were quicker to uptake telemedicine were the people that we said never would. So we just didn't know what we didn't know, and we were just really weighing those assumptions in terms of what we were making investment decisions in our innovation. So I think that's the biggest opportunity right now from a data perspective, is taking examples. Most of the biggest data sets right now in telemedicine are around mental health. And a lot of the behavioral health applications that were the first ones to go to market and really get large volumes of throughput. So taking that and then seeing what are the parallels into other parts of other types of healthcare, other specialties, and then seeing what we can draw from that. We have the data volume. We know a little bit more, and then kind of moving forth from there. So we also don't want to just throw it in with everything else. We want to be mindful about how we connect those pipes in order to create meaningful insights. But I think it's the time to set that up is now. Analytics cannot be an afterthought. That's going to put us in the same position we've been in.
No, I totally agree. I mean, this is one of my obsessions always, maybe because I'm industrial engineer, to care about data. And because I always believe that science is about taking data and analyzing it properly. So it's how we build science. But let's go for another thing. Let's go to AI. And what should be or could be the role of AI in telemedicine, within telemedicine. And well, Victor already mentioned some things, but you want to start, Justin?
AI is clearly a very broad subject. There's a few areas that I'm involved in which I can speak to a great degree. So computer vision, using deep learning and natural language processing are two areas that can take unstructured data and start to
this algorithm to put some action for the professional, so really the professional focus on the priority for the patient. Otherwise, the professional have a lot of information and lose, and this create anxiety for them. And then.
Okay, yeah. So I really see that AI has a lot, and how I see is by helping the professionals in their taking of decisions in real time. I think that's something that would really change a lot of things and help them take better decisions. I'm going to put another example of what we do. For example, when a professional, in our case, receives a question, he will also get, after typing an answer, a suggestion of links that we get through the NHS with an API that we have with them, which is content that we think is relevant, or that our AI thinks is relevant, given the content of the question from the user. So that's another example of how we can help a physician provide quicker and better answers. Of course, the physician has to choose it, has to be sure that's the good link. But if we provide a link to the professional, in 90% of the times he will click this link and send it to the user so he can have more information about the medication, a disease, or whatever it is.
In my role as kind of the bridge between the technologists and the developers and the clinicians and the end users, my focus, there's two things that I do every single day when AI comes up. Education. What is AI? What really is it? And how is it relevant for that specific use case? And the second one is transparency. So how do we remain transparent across the whole kind of life cycle of the AI process, from a development perspective all the way through what is surfaced to the clinician or whoever's making the decision support? And those are really the two things. I feel like we're at that point, right, where we're really educating and really trying to understand what is it that is possible for the technology, and then how do we create the technology frameworks in order to, once we get that end result, that it will be usable, it will be there will be uptake. So that's really where we're at with that process in AI and how we're implementing it.
Yeah, we've been talking about data, and obviously AI can help us structure that data and get the most out of it, like predictive models, etc. But also we like AI as a driving model to the most efficient service of, and not efficient only in economical approach or timing approach, but also in quality of care that could help us deliver the most for the patient experience and the whole system actually to be sustainable.
No, and you're also pointing in a direction that I like, because, and this came up with the conversation that we had prior this panel. Are we really re-engineering the process for the patient, or are we just putting layers in what we have? Because I see a lot of times just putting layers and not thinking about how we could really re-engineer all the patient experience. Well, what do you think about this? I don't remember who goes now. I think it's Silvia.
No, my answer is no, really. We needed to do a lot of work, but not only from the point of view of the patient. In my case, I would like to put the attention on the professional, because we say, okay, we introduce the technology and we think that everything needed to work just because we have introduced the technology. And it's not like this. For example, in our case, we want to digitize a rehabilitation service of the hospital of a big center, and the manager of the center say, okay, this is the technology, and they just add a workload more for physiotherapists. And it's not the case. We needed to integrate, we needed to change the dynamic of the work to introduce this new process. So we needed to stop and think how I can redesign the process to make this as effective as possible. But we also understand that we are every time in a hurry to do this exercise. So we needed to do more effort in this sense.
So I'm going to be a little bit skeptical again. I think that changing processes is extremely complex. We're talking about industry with millions of persons, of course, millions of users. And I'm going to put an example that's historical. When Semmelweis in the 19th century discovered that students were infecting mothers that were giving birth after doing autopsies, and he proved that. What changed? Nothing. It didn't change until some decades, right? He died from an infection he caught doing some years later, right? So it didn't change. Even if it was true, it took decades. So changing the system is hardcore. It's very difficult. So I think we need to adapt. I think that's how I see it. We need to understand, and I'm going to put another example. As a psychiatrist, I have seen lots of apps that were telling me they're going to sell a product to the psychiatrists that they will prescribe to their clients or their users or patients, so that they don't have to go to the psychiatrist. And okay, that sounds very good as an idea, but they are not going to prescribe something that will get them out of the business. So we need to understand how it works before, and I think we need to adapt. Of course, forcing the change, but it's a process that will take decades.
Now it's working. I see us making the same mistakes we made when we were going into digital records. which was take the same burdensome processes and then just putting some technology on top of it, and then in that creating another layer of difficulty. And we're doing the same thing with telemedicine. And it's rare that I run into platforms that are doing that more consultative approach. It's because it's hard. It's really hard to go in there and tell people that they're going to have to work differently, but it is something that's going to become really crucial, and then that opportunity for the technology to actually optimize instead of just digitalize the process. So I think we didn't make that mistake too long ago. I think it's within the last decade that most of our hospitals and our system became digital, and I think we can point to that and see how we're still suffering the consequences of doing that in order to not make the same mistakes again.
Yeah, actually, I also think that's a lot of work to do. And we as citizens, we are used to different experiences like Netflix or WhatsApp, etc. That's really easy to use, or it's really predictive of what we want to watch or what we want to do. But what we've been focusing till now is doing the same thing we've been doing the whole time, but digital. So we're not re-engineering these processes. We have to focus on the processes. We have to check every stakeholder's processes and just check what we can change or what we can adapt with technology that could make it easier or more efficient.
I think one of the biggest barriers for us on the technology side is to earn a seat at that table. How do we earn a seat to have that conversation with the people who are willing to make these changes? And that's a really, really difficult. We need to kind of reflect on and see how do we earn that trust and earn that voice within organizations.
Up on that one, because I think change is highly complex, but what we have to is that a healthcare system.
We must be patient.
Can I just add one other thing, which is if you look at the financial services industry and the transformation that they've undergone, the banks have found it almost impossible to change. And so what we've seen is new fintechs that emerge that don't have the legacy systems and can then move unencumbered. So I think it is down to startups, Oracle for startups maybe, to be able to drive the sort of change that we need.
Sure. We encourage, of course, them to do it and to help us, the small ones, to fight against corporations for this. We are getting to the end, and I wanted to ask you, how do you envision this patient experience in telemedicine in the near future? So we can do a round of your thoughts about this idea. Who wants to take it first?
Let me just start with a thought, and this is a quote that you're probably all familiar with from Arthur C. Clarke, who said that any sufficiently advanced technology is essentially the same as magic. And I'd like to think, as we look to the future of telemedicine, that it's just invisible. It just happens. We just know it. We just talk to Alexa. We tell Alexa what's happening. We potentially have invasive graphene inside our skull that's monitoring something if that needs monitoring. And we're just able to continually integrate and develop the therapy that we need, the medicine that we need, the surgery that's required. But we won't be aware of it. It's not like we're going to an app, we've got to fill in a form, we've got to do something, and then fill it in and sign it and then send it off and get it wrong and to try it again and move it. All of the challenges that we've seen with the web and the interfaces that many organizations will stick up that just make you realize all they're doing is making you do all the work and they're making a bit more profit.
Who goes? Alexandra?
Go. I think Justin is getting us to 40 years from now. No, but I agree. I think that is a huge opportunity. And you said a word that it's going to stick in my head for a while, and that's agency. And I think that's what we need to provide the patients. It's not a patronizing approach of like, here's a little bit of data to appease you. It's not this like, let me just give you the same report that we gave the doctor that you have no idea what it means and you have to Google every single line and every range to know what it means. It's really about providing that agency and that content and context that's going to empower them. So that's where I see the big opportunity.
Yeah, I would also add that it would be seamless also, because it would be as easy to use as to send a WhatsApp or to ask Alexa for something, and also personalized and really efficient and sustainable for the system.
In the short or medium term, I would be happy if it makes things easier and more efficient. If it helps professionals take decisions, it helps users or patients being closer to the professionals. I think that's more than enough. For the rest, I don't know. I can go anywhere. We'll see.
Also, in my case, of course, the patient of the future will be a patient connected, but is the present, not the future. Just one thing more, that we need also to try not to lose the humanity behind the tool of telemedicine, because also we needed to be able to identify when a face-to-face visit is needed and more in-depth evaluation is needed, or simply because the patient needs a human contact. So I think that technology is important, but we need really to make attention to not lose the humanity behind.
Well, I think that was great. You raised a lot of topics and a lot of insights. I really hope that the industry and healthcare listen to all your words and we move forward into this journey. So I want to thank you for your participation, and also a big thank to all the Barcelona Health Hub team that has worked to make this happen these days. You have done a great job. Thank you. And well, thank you for listening. See you. Bye.